All right, we are very excited to be joined by Patrick Wilson. Thank you so much for joining us today. We talked a little before we just did our official start, but you are in one of the better room setups that we've seen in our now year plus of doing Zoom interviews. But lots of, I mean,
Great.
you're in a music room basically. It looks
I'm
outstanding.
in music
Obviously.
room. Yeah, with actually that is a deer's ass that my grandfather stuffed in like the 70s. And I thought, why not put it up on the wall? Yeah.
That's one of those things I feel like you see that years ago and you're like, ah, what's this? And then later on in life, you're like, well, that's a must keep. That absolutely
Well,
has to stay.
among we don't need to spend too long, but among other, yeah, I got a lot of like rock memorabilia too. I grew up a drummer. I'm a huge Van Halen fan, so I've got Alex signed a drum head for me, and then I've got a bunch of like, that's the only time that I ever got nervous was meeting rock stars. So I have little signatures of, guitar picks and pick guards and sheet music and drum heads around.
I love
It's
that.
fun.
It's again, we're in the plain white room that we're in here, so you're
Beautiful.
spicing it up a little bit. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's
It's beautiful. It's
nice,
beautiful.
nice coding.
Very well
The
decorated.
Conjuring. We're back again. The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It in theaters, June 4th.
Yeah.
Theaters June 4th. One of the most sensational. Okay, I'll read this now. One of the most sensational cases from the files of the real-life paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, where a young boy is murdered and the murder suspect claims demonic possession as a defense for the first time in the history of the United States. Eighth Conjuring movie. Conjuring cinema, everything's a cinematic universe these days.
Right.
Fourth you've been in though.
Yeah.
Now though, I mean, it has to be great knowing that not just a demand, but a fan base. Like I feel like you couldn't have imagined this when you first started. Like you'd be so many deep into this thing that
Yeah.
I'm sure wasn't intended to be like this all these years later, right?
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, I thought if we did the first one right, that we'd be back for two, maybe three. I did not see the tentacles of the whole universe. I didn't. But it's also as an actor, you feel like, well, maybe really as anybody, if you think about it, like I don't know what I'm doing next week. It's like you can't think. We're so used to train. We're so trained to go job by job. Like I've spent 30 years of holidays and my mother saying, "Are you going to be home for Thanksgiving?" And it's like April. Like, Mom, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Nothing
Hmm.
personal. Can we revisit this in like September? Maybe October. So I couldn't fathom, 8, 9 movies in and all that stuff. But I did, with respect, I did, I had done Insidious with James Wan, and so when we were discussing this and sort of the idea of following the heroes versus the villain, which is what usually, they run their course, whether it's, Halloween's or Freddy or Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, you're always following the villain. So if you switched it and followed the heroes, then you can have different villains each movie. Basically, if you're setting it up like that, then you thought, you know what? If we don't screw this up, we could do several. So we're glad we're here.
It's Is there a different feel to jumping back on a set for something like this where obviously things change from movie to movie, but this is not like you hopping into a franchise or hopping into a brand new movie. Like, does it have almost like a TV set feel where like, oh, it's like the gang is back together for this next adventure?
Yeah, yeah. It is. I mean, certainly with, this time we have a different director, Michael Shav. So James took a back seat and was producing it, but he really shepherded it from the beginning, and, his ideas for story and, similar producers, and obviously with Vera and Steve Coulter's, a few actors that have stayed with us the entire franchise. But yeah, in movie world, it's the closest to feeling like episodic TV, where you can kind of come back. So it's an unusual feeling, really, when you just do movies, because you're so used to wrapping after a few months and be like, oh, this was great. And I used to in my 20s go, hey, get your number. And then you just realize that's never going to happen. So it's just like, see you on the next one, whenever that's going to be. But on these, we actually do get to see each other again.
How do you feel as an actor about simultaneous release? Because we've talked to a lot of actors that have been doing stuff with Warner, and like some of them getting simultaneous release on HBO Max and with other services as well. Because I think with certain genres of movies, like big blockbusters, and I think especially with horror, they're so built for the theater experience. And like for me, like I was lucky enough to see a screening of The Devil Made Me Do It a few days ago, and being in an environment like a theater where you can control like your environment around you, I think it just adds to that element of horror so much more than if you're in your house. You can turn on your lights, you can just close your laptop, you can do whatever. Like, how do you feel about again, as an actor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different. Yeah, it's a huge conversation, but I will. I'm with you. I agree. I do think when you think about movies, superhero movies, sort of big tentpole movies and horror movies that really rely on the experience. I do think you should go see this in the theater. That being said, as much as I just want things to be in the theater, I mean, that's a little sort of archaic now. And the fact that even look a few weeks ago when Mortal Kombat came out, and still so many theaters were barely open. And it did, for what they expect, decent numbers, right? And it doesn't. So I think the jury's out to whether it's really going to impact streaming. There's really no data that says that, hey, now that people can stream, they don't go to the movies. I mean, 2019, I think, was still the biggest year ever we've had, and you can blame that on ticket prices and a lot of other things. Again, it's a long conversation, but the two can work in tandem. I think the people like you, the people like me that do want that experience, I think will still go. And I think if you think about it in terms of a commodity or of an IP, right? We're at least able to go, you know what? Maybe the same amount of people aren't going into the theater, but the franchise is growing because more people are seeing it at home. So you've got to kind of look at the glass half full on this stuff, because it was certainly to every Warner Brothers movie that they just said, okay, we're going on HBO Max for 30 days. Our initial reaction was, what? But
yep.
Now that it settles in and this is the world we're in, let's just ride the wave here. So I think if people still have the opportunity to go to a theater, which looks, we're all reopening, so they should. But if you can't, just see it where you can.
It's kind of funny too, because I feel like in the beginning of when everyone was kind of quarantined, you just get things online. Like Ken Jack and I were like, we're theater guys. Like, we'll sit in a theater for 12 hours if we can go back to back to back all day. But yeah, maybe that's not the case for everyone. Where in the beginning, like a couple things went online. You're like, oh, this, like no one's ever going to go again. But I feel like the more it went on, you're like, I just want to go to a movie theater. Like, I don't even care what I see. People were renting movies from years ago. Well,
and I've also got a different side of this, because I have a small group that we got involved in the theater exhibitor business, meaning I'm opening a new theater, and so I'm probably the wrong guy to talk to if they're like poo-pooing going to theaters, because I want everyone to go. But I will say, I've said this for several years when I've been trying to renegotiate how to work, whether it's dine-in or better seating or reserve seating. If you throw it all away, right, COVID or not, there are so few experiences. Even if you're not even like a diehard movie fan, like clearly you guys are and like I am. Even if you're just an average fan who's looking for, like, what do I do on a date night? What do I do with my family? Like, you can only go bowling so many times, right? So nothing against bowling. But there's no, if you think about it, in terms of entertainment, family entertainment, date entertainment, entertainment with your buddies, it's movies.
Yeah.
It's movies. And it will always be that. I'm sorry. I've had more conversations with people that are like, it's never coming back. And I think, you're crazy. First of all, it will shift and change just like any type of that entertainment has. But I also started in the theater. Like, theater's been around for thousands of years. Like, it ain't going anywhere. It's going to shape and shift in your seating capacity and show times, and maybe that will adjust. But there's nothing like going to a movie theater. There's nothing like it.
Mm-hmm. Granted, again, you just said you're opening a theater, but that's a great pitch, right? I mean, yeah. You should do the commercial. I know they're throwing them out there now. We're all in on that. So you got us agreeing.
McConaughey just did one. I mean, Tom Cruise did one. I mean, next up, Patrick Wilson. You have to be the theater guy. I agree, though. It's always going to adapt and change and get its way in. It's a fluid industry. So ahead of this interview, I just looked up because I was like, I wonder where right now the Conjuring universe stands in the highest grossing horror franchises of all time, and it's number one. Like, technically Godzilla is, but fuck that. I mean, it's not, it's a monster movie. It's not really, it's not a classical horror movie. I don't know why they included it in it, but Conjuring universe is absolutely number one in the franchise of highest grossing of all time. And like, what was your favorite horror movies growing up? Because I think because me and Jeff, for us, it's movies like Saw. But now when I talk to like my younger cousins, it's Conjuring. Like, they talk about like what their favorite horror movies are. And they're like, yeah, we watch all the Conjuring movies all the time.
Yeah, and if you think about it, because I'm clearly, not clearly, but since you referenced Saw, like a little older than you guys, like Saw. If you think about when Saw came out, James and Lee again, my Insidious folks, they revolutionized horror. They turned horror on its head in the late '90s, right? I mean, that's what sort of led the charge of all those really gory, it's a much different vibe. For me, the kind of horror movies that I grew up on were more kind of towed that line between horror and thriller. Whether it was, when I was a kid, Poltergeist, Jaws, if you can get into that. I mean, certainly scary and freaky. Silence of the Lambs came out when I was in high school, and that was a huge. So those stories to me sort of resonate because they can surpass the genre. I think that's the thing. So for me, different than like a Saw or those types of movies. For me, I like movies that nothing against Saw, but that superseded the genre. You know what I mean? That, like, my biggest compliment that I love is when I get people that say, you know what, I don't even like horror movies, but I love The Conjuring, because I think, I love movies that involve story, that involve character, that involve a relationship or humor, because the more that you care about these people, then when they're in peril, then we're really pulling for them. So those are the stories that more resonated with me, but it's I do meet a lot of people. You're usually with me because I've been in both Insidious and Conjuring franchises. Like they end up usually younger kids gravitate towards Insidious because of all the kind of creatures and a little more supernatural stuff. A little older crowd that's even religious at all is like, oh God, Conjuring, I can't do it. I can't do that. So it really becomes very personal what your taste is.
You mentioned James, and you're kind of, now tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like, are you like James Guy? There's always like, there's a director, actor, actress combo. Like, would you consider yourself to be like it's James Wan, Patrick Wilson? Like, you're kind of his guy. Is that true? It just seems to be the case for most of his movies. Is that, would you consider that your relationship?
We're about to start Aquaman 2, so this will be our sixth movie. So, yeah, I mean,
you're a duo.
We're a great duo for sure. I mean, I wouldn't want to lock him into just movies with middle-aged white guys. So do your thing, man. It's all good. And I also go off and work with a whole bunch of different directors. But there is something so special, and I certainly do. When I think of like Carpenter and Russell, to me those were like that combo I adored. So any sort of similarity to that, any sort of I have deep reverence for those combos, and you see it. I mean, I think you see with a lot of directors. I love working with directors a second time. If you get the third and fourth, it's even better, because I think they know your wheelhouse, but they want to push you. Let's try this with you, and that takes a certain director to really know you personally. And I've had a few that sort of will work on me on something and go, I want to do something totally different than this with you. Like I've done that with Joe Carnahan and another director, a couple others that I've worked with twice. And I love that. I think that director relationship is really important. But hey, if I'm James's guy, I'm certainly happy. We're going into number 6, so there's something there.
Speaking of directors, you're going to be directing for the first time, right, on Insidious 5. You got any nerves going into that?
Yeah, good nerves. I mean, usually, I like to choose things that scare me, not literally scare me, but that make me a little uneasy, and I love the challenge. I mean, it's been something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and it was just about finding the right story, and the right support group, honestly. So the fact that they came my way with this, and the story was something that I thought we could shape into a very personal story, and the fact that I'll be working with Ty, who was Dalton in the first 2, but I also did Little Children with Ty when he was 3. So now he's 19 years old. So again, back to working with people that you like and So that's I'm looking forward to that. I wish we could have gotten it in before shooting, because we're ready, but before shooting Aquaman, but just runway was getting smaller and COVID and having to train for Aquaman. So we pushed it to shoot right after we're done in London.
Another project I want to talk about, older. So we actually today we're interviewing you or airing an interview with Zack Snyder. We didn't get to talk to. We actually ran out of time to get to talk to Zack about Watchmen at all.
Oh, wow.
But we are very big Watchmen fans,
Yeah.
especially after the series. Did you happen to catch the series at all on HBO?
Yeah, for sure. I have my little night owl doll right here. Well,
I'll
bring him into here. I'll put him right here.
Which, I mean,
awesome.
Night Owl was kind of. I mean, he was the only one we really didn't get to see much. We saw the vehicle and everything, but like he's in jail or so they
say, right?
tell us. So I'll set this up. I assume I feel like you're in the boat of like you've been in a comic book movie multiple now. You always get this, well, what's next? What's this? But when DC and Warner did an event last year, they teased like the multiverse now. They teased with Flash. They're going to break open the multiverse. Right. Everyone's doing that now. They had a couple shots of Watchmen in there. Like, is that ever in the back of your head? Like, what if we came back again? Like, what if we did it again? Because it almost seems crazy because Watchmen's so like confined to that story. But now with the series, like, does it cross your mind now and then?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it crosses my mind. I think because it came back into the ether with the show, and while the show was awesome, the show wasn't, Watchmen to me because that's not the comic. So
right.
It's awesome for what it is, and I loved it. Was in hook, line, and sinker watching Yaya, my Aquaman buddy. I mean, it was
right.
awesome. Mm-hmm. It was fantastic, and I really got into it. I loved all the nerdy little Easter eggs everywhere. I mean, I totally geeked out, and I understood if people were like, I don't know what's going on. You're like, all right,
it's like one of the nerdiest shows of all time. It truly
100%,
is.
100%. And the fact they all wore masks, I mean, pre-COVID is crazy. It's crazy. Actually, I haven't watched it now. It'd be interesting to watch it like literally now after we've been through the past year. But I digress. Yeah, I mean, I always felt like as much as I love that, right? I was, I think 35 or 30, maybe 35 playing Dan. And we all were young, which is typically what they do in a comic book franchise, because they figure, hey, we might get 2 or 3 out of you, and this is going to take several years. I mean, that's one theory. So of course I would love to do that now that we can really, now that we're strangely all more agely appropriate, I think it would be, it'd be fascinating. I don't know where you do. I mean, I say this like you guys, like a fan. It'd be super cool. I don't know. Who knows? It'd be cool. It'd be cool to do some weird thing, but I don't know what that is.
We loved it. It's a movie that I think is definitely aged even better with time, especially we can get to see like the ultimate cut and all of that. And just, we liked it a ton. And there's one specific scene that it always just stuck out to me, and it's your scream when Rorschach dies. It's an all-time scream. How many takes did that take you?
And that's heartbreaking. There are a few scenes that I do that I can remove myself and watch it, like really watch it and not go, I don't buy it, or and that actually is one of them that you're so invested in Sweet Dan's journey and his buddy, so what a strange relationship he and Rorschach have, it breaks your heart. How many takes? Just a couple. Yeah. I don't think very many. Yeah, this was not like a Fincher type move where we're sitting there for 20, 30 takes. It wasn't. Zach didn't work like that, at least not then. No, we very few. I don't know if I had that many in me. You kind of, you just have to dive in and something like that. And you get about 2 or 3, and then it starts to feel phony.
Well, that's what I was about to ask, because like we're not actors, but like that's one of those things where even as someone who's not an actor, I can kind of assume, because like, I mean, even in everyday life, like you play things up now and then. I feel like after a couple, you start to even in your own head go like, well, no, I don't have it anymore.
Overthink,
like,
yeah.
That was all I had.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the scene. I mean, without getting too nerdy. I mean, I think sometimes your first 2, for me, I'm so used to doing like, 1 is what it is. I like 2 or 3. After that, it's something else. However, I've been with guys that all of a sudden it dips down, and then it'll come back up in like 10, 11. You're like, man, I've been here. This is crazy. Like I'm 15, take 15. So you got to refocus, shake it up, do something different. So there certainly is a method to that madness. But usually things I find that are confined, that are emotional things, the more raw you can get, which is really a few takes. I mean, I used to talk about this with the movie Hard Candy that we shot in like 19 days. And I always feel like it would have been a different movie. And I really do believe this, at least performance wise, if we shot it over like 3 months, like a typical sort of studio film, because I felt like, when you're confined to sorry, it's a lot of construction going on.
It's actually happening behind me too. It's like it's crazy.
No,
it's totally fine.
Whole kitchen rebuild. So it's like, but I thought they were off today. Clearly they're not. But when you're, let's say, confined to a table all day, right? Or chained up, it's, by the end, it's like, okay, I got like 6 hours of this and then I'm done. And then I'm done. It's not like, wow, this 3-page scene is going to take 3 days. So let's figure out how to make them loose and how to kind of, act more. It's just more like, screw it, let's go for it. So that creates a really raw performance, I think.
Reminder, Conjuring, that made me do it in theaters June 4th. I keep saying 6/4, I guess same thing. But actually, now that you mentioned that though, with Insidious 5, like how much was your control over how long the shoot? Did that matter to you? Obviously, that's something that's on your mind. Like, did it matter how long the shoot would be? Is that something you've kind of tried to control there for trying to get what you want?
Well, it's still up for discussion because we're not doing it. I mean, you always want more days, but I've never been on a movie, whether it's, Aquaman or some teeny little indie where they're not like, I wish we had one more day. No, you never have enough time. You don't. It's just the nature of the beast. So clearly in a movie like that, if it does, you're scrambling for days, when you're, Insidious, I think, knock on wood, we can revisit this in a year, but we'll be good to go. We've got the support, the franchise, and Blumhouse knows how to do this better than anybody. And and honestly, the first 2 movies that we did 10 years ago were like for $1 million. We shot it for whatever it was. The budget was around then, and you're slamming it out in 23, 24 days. Now the budget is 8-10 times that, which at least gives you more days. So that's even 5 more days than that. 30 is a huge deal. So, but there are certain, like a Bone Tomahawk is another sort of, horror
love that.
It's awesome. But I as much as I love that movie, if we had just even a day, even one more day on that movie, I guarantee you that. This is so terrible to say, but that last scene would have had more time, more coverage, maybe more money in post. I mean, just a couple more days on that would have. I know, but see,
it's nice when you can say that about a movie that people like. It's nice when you can say that because that movie that's a suggestion all the time from us. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned Aquaman though. You were first one. Got to go toe to toe with Jason Momoa. That can't be an easy task for any human, maybe outside
right.
like Dwayne Johnson. Second go round, did you try to maybe match Momoa a little bit though? Again, is that even humanly possible? Again, outside of The Rock, is it? Because you were pretty fucking big in that movie too, and even then, it's Jason Momoa.
No, I know. Yeah, I'm not growing 4 inches, so 3.5, whatever it is. It's close to 4. Yeah, no, in moments like that, I mean, I've always been, both my brothers are taller than me. So they're about 6'2" and I'm just about 6 feet. So I've always been, even in my own family, like the smaller guy. So I've always had this, and this is total non sequitur, but I'm a huge UFC fan. So whenever I'm fighting somebody that's really big, I just sort of go into that, that middleweight mentality, that welterweight mentality, like, come on, Kamaru Usman's not going to be afraid of that guy. I don't care how how taller he is. You know what I mean? So I always try to think of that. Like, I remember when Randy Couture beat Brock Lesnar, like I can really break down sort of those moments to sort of hype me up. So
now if we see you two fight again, I'm going to think he channeled Usman here. That's what he did. That's incredible.
Yeah, that would be
one of the better guys to definitely channel after.
Channel somebody. He's rolling pretty good.
So Aquaman, obviously there was a lot of CGI involved just because like, again, like you were saying, like nature of the beast with a movie like this, all underwater, a lot of CGI required. Like what sort of sense did you get in any given scene, like what it was going to actually look like by the end of it? Like, could you even tell at all?
No, no, it was like you get this stuff called previs, which is pre-visualization where it looks like this is going to totally date me, but it looks like a bad version of Dragon's Lair. Do you ever remember you're gonna go, what? There was like Dragon's Lair was one of the first arcade games that came out that had like real effects. I mean, it was like a story. So whenever
choose your own adventure, right?
Yeah, it was not a great game, but the effects were kind of real. You know, you're sort of like, so that's what previs looks like. So you see a guy that kind of looks like you. It's like a cartoon. It's like a bad cartoon of you. So that's what you watch, and you go, oh, okay, that, blue, pommel horse is actually a giant whale. Okay, at least I now know the scope of what I'm sitting on, So it does help for that, but we don't see anything remotely close to what it's going to look like. You just have to sort of trust that you're not going to look like a fool, which doesn't always work.
See, is there any? I don't want to hang up too much on Aquaman 2 because I feel like we're so far away from that. But is there any little tease, anything that that you can maybe give that something may surprise you? I mean, I imagine you know everything.
I know a decent amount. I will not lie.
Are we going to be maybe taking a little bit different direction? I have to assume James, everyone's got some stuff up their sleeve.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this: if you look at when James comes back for sequels, he always pushes it. He never retreads the same ground, and after the second Insidious got super bizarro, wacky. I'm Jack Torrance crazy pants. The second Conjuring, we really opened it up. We went to England. We had this amazing soundtrack, and it was a much broader flick. So yes, with this will come a lot of new stuff, yes, he's constantly pushing himself.
Has to be a little like relief too, because even the last one, like Ken Jack was just saying, like it was all alive, it was underwater, and that could have gone horribly wrong too, and it obviously didn't because it was so well received. But like that could have been a near disaster, just everything's so underwater.
Yeah, well, I think you got it. You when so much of it's underwater, like it's one thing in like, say Justice League, right? Or something where, it's only one or two scenes. Let's put them in a bubble and we kind of don't need to really deal with the anatomy of these Atlanteans. Like, well, they wouldn't make bubbles. So they wouldn't be really talking. You know what I mean? Like you can't get too deep into that because you got to at some point kind of throw it all away. And like we're making Aquaman. Okay. So let's not sort of, nitpick about the specifics of how to breathe underwater. So when I will say going into the second one, I'm sure, and I know that so many things were discovered again, because it had never been done before. Right. And we couldn't figure out how to do it. Like, do you use water? Do you, it just, so going into the second one, there's a lot of new technology that they can use that I think will save them a lot of time and a lot of money and us a lot too. I mean, we were hanging on wires for, months, it seems like, and I don't care who you are. I mean, anybody, we're certainly between me and Jason, he's, I don't know, 230, 40, whatever it is, and I'm 210 and you're hanging in wire. And like, I don't care who you are. That's not comfortable. It's just,
I can't imagine.
So I'm sure there's, new VFX things that we can do now that will ease that up, for sure.
Over time, hopefully. I want to mention one other movie that you were in that I think people are starting to rediscover, which is Phantom of the Opera, which is a movie I am super affectionate for. There is, and I'm not sure, are you aware of the app TikTok?
No, tell me about TikTok.
I'm just making sure. Some different actors, different strokes,
I don't have.
Okay, so
you're not totally wrong. Yes, I do know what it
is. You were subject to a very viral TikTok, which I will have Jeff pull up. I don't know if you remember this.
Right. Sing it. Right in tune. Excellent vibrato. That's funny. I'm not.
So, Carl, what was that for?
That was a rehearsal where they were coming in. They said, we need to shoot some video of you guys just rehearsing. Just be casual about it. And so as I'm singing it, and I don't even think I sing that in the recording, because that's one of like 800 people singing it. But I was there, and I was like, I'll just sing the high B or whatever, B flat, whatever it is. Yeah, it was pretty silly.
Well, TikTok now. I mean, you're like a musical genius on TikTok. So
A viral sensation.
That's all it took. 17 years later. That video literally is from like 2003.
Well, crazy how things restart, but that's the internet. Thank you so much. This was an absolute blast. Hey, Insidious 5. Feel free. We'll be here. Aquaman 2, whatever. But The Conjuring, Devil Made Me Do It. June 4th, obviously theaters. If you can get there, HBO Max. Good luck with. Let us know where this theater's going to be too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We've got a couple.
Absolutely, stop by. Thank
excited.
you so much. It's been a blast. Good luck.
Nice to see you guys.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you.